Chapter 5: Fractional or Fictional Reserve Banking. Undoubtedly, this is one of the book's most important chapters, and by the end, you'll fully grasp the deception behind the fractional reserve banking practice and its negative effects on you and I. Perhaps the best way to preview this chapter is to borrow the well-thought-out anecdote that appears a little bit later in Chapter 5. So with that, let's begin. I'd like to take you to a business owner in Florida. This individual owned a marina with 200 dock slips as well as a supporting boat repair shop. Eventually, the owner grew tired of only earning 5% returns and wanted to make 10 to 100 times the returns like the banking field does. So he studied the principles of fractional reserve banking and then shut down the marina in order to revamp his approach. He later reopened with a new strategy that included a host of enticing incentives, including free docking for his new target market, northern boaters. Well, obviously the northern boaters were beside themselves. They were used to paying thousands per month in slip fees, and plus all these other incentives made it a no-brainer. The slips filled up quickly, and eventually there were hundreds on a waiting list. But how? How could the new owner absorb all these new incentives and then turn it into a much higher profit? Well, at this point, the owner implements the fraud he's been planning all along. So first, the owner decided to make use of the northern boaters' assets when they weren't in Florida. After all, they're hundreds of miles away and won't be using them anyways. With the 200 boats in the marina, he created 9 counterfeit titles for every boat that was stored there. He then walked interested buyers throughout the marina until he sold all 9 titles for every boat, creating an additional 1,800 owners. With 1,800 new boat sales, no wonder he could absorb the new incentives. But don't miss the true fraud here. There are now 2,000 individuals who all believe they own a boat, yet only 200 boats exist. Now, anyone listening to this short story would be appalled at the business owner, undoubtedly calling him a con artist. But of course, the owner would naturally justify his con by claiming more people are enjoying boating privileges than ever before, at a lower cost than ever before. And he'll be quick to point out that he has stimulated the boating economy by helping dormant assets become active ones, maybe even pointing out the trickle-down positive effect on the local economy. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a visual of what happens in fractional reserve banking. Now, my guess is that most viewing this video at this point are probably thinking, there's no way fractional reserve banking in this modern age looks like this. Well, unfortunately, many economists throughout history have sounded the alarm as well, and Woodward begins the chapter by explaining the late economist Friedrich von Hayek noted the connection between fractional reserve banking and dark magic when he explained, activities that appear to add available wealth out of nothing without physical recreation and by merely rearranging what already exists stinks of sorcery. Now, this rearranging of what already exists, it should remind you of our marina example. But more specifically, let's take a look at what this looks like in modern day banking. This simple example focuses on 2 key deposits. First, 50 people walk into a bank and all deposit $2,000 each into their checking accounts, which means the bank now has $100,000 in total deposits. This will represent deposit 1. Next, a borrower comes along looking for $50,000 to make a purchase. Realizing they have plenty in deposits, the bank lends out $50,000 from deposit 1. The borrower then takes the $50,000 and purchases an item from a seller. Now imagine that same seller takes the newly acquired $50,000 and makes a deposit into a checking account at the same bank. Let's call this deposit 2. The bank claims its total deposits are now $150,000, but that $50,000 is actually being double counted. Notice the dual ownership in this example. In other words, the individuals that represent deposit 1 are the rightful owners of their original deposit of $100,000. The individual represented in deposit 2 is clearly the rightful owner of his or her $50,000. But how can the bank owe this $50,000 to the original depositors and the new depositor at the same time? Just like in the boating example, different people believe they are the full owner of the same money, which is a logical impossibility but a fraudulent reality. The bank only has $100,000 in actual deposits, and if all depositors were to withdraw their funds at the same time, the bank would be $50,000 short. Here we see some of the basic elements of the fractional reserve banking fraud playing out, and it makes Hayek's statements ring a bit more true. Banks essentially claim much of our money as their own and use it as their own long-term asset. Woodward presents a thought-provoking question that you and I should ponder. Consider that if you were to walk into a bank today and request a private safe deposit box to store some valuable items, the bank isn't allowed to access its contents without first your consent. Now, shouldn't our hard-earned everyday deposits be treated with the same respect? Put simply, if you're going to use my money, you should request it for a defined period of time at an interest rate that we both agree upon. Woodward concludes the chapter by emphasizing that fractional reserve banking isn't solely a moral issue. It also expands the money supply, leading to a significant negative impact on the economy. He explains that the most detrimental aspect of fractional reserve banking is the economic whiplash it causes. Specifically, every phase of monetary inflation is followed by a systematic period of monetary deflation. Pay close attention to the reinforcing loop illustrations that highlight the inherent nature of fractional reserve banking. It displays how it can expand and contract the money supply, but never provide stability. As mentioned in an earlier chapter, monetary stability, or what economists call sound money, is essential for a properly functioning free market, and it's the only thing fractional reserve banking cannot provide. In other words, although it might be the world's greatest fraud, based on its inherently unstable nature, it's also the world's worst money supply. The main point here is this damaging financial system has been making a very small group of people very wealthy for a long period of time, and that's exactly why it hasn't been dealt with. With that introduction, it's time to unpack Chapter 5.